Welcome to Rejection Rehab, the only podcast out there specifically designed to help you get over the fear of rejection and to build lasting confidence. Each week, I interview a fascinating new human. This week is a goodie. They've gone through rejection, they've looked it in the face, they've overcome it, and they've built lasting confidence. This week, it gives me enormous pleasure to introduce you to Jim Lubinski. He's been a professional in two sports, ice hockey and triathlon. He's a triathlon coach at Tower 26, head triathlon coach there. He has the podcast Be Race Ready. He's also the husband to a lovely wife, a father to two great kids. He's my triathlon coach. And most of all, he's become a great friend of mine. Jim Lubinski, welcome to the show.
To cue the crowd, cue the applause. This is amazing. Tom, I'm so happy you started doing this. You told me about it a couple of weeks ago, and man, I'm so honored to be on. So thank you for having me. I think we're going to have a great conversation here, and I'm over the moon. You finally got into podcasting. I've been saying for years, you have the voice, you have the personality, and
shame I don't have the face. Well, you've got the face though. You bring that.
Here's the thing. What we used to do, I've done a podcast. I think I was the original podfather of endurance sport podcasting, right? I was one of the first. 2010, I started my first podcast, and I would say I got a face for radio. Fortunately, this is a video and audio podcast.
Stop it. You need your eyes checked. Your face is chiseled like a pro athlete.
It's excited to have you on here. We got the video version. We got the audio version going. So you're going to see some success with this thing because that personality really shows through on the mic. I've listened to a couple episodes, and I am loving it, man.
I love that, and I really do appreciate you coming on. And one thing I want to apologize for before we get started is that all my guests, I send one of these Rejection Rehab mugs, and unfortunately I didn't have time to send you one. I promise I will send you one. I was wondering if you could could you have a substitute mug or something that you could have in its place?
Funny enough, I have a coffee mug right here, and there's nothing on it, and I'm at my desk right now, so if I read, there's a Sharpie.
Only if you call it a tea mug rather than a coffee mug, we'll let you.
Okay, this is my tea mug. So if I write it on there, can I write it on there? I'm not going to have the exact.
Get it on. Here's what it looks like. Rejection Rehab.
An English major. I'm not going to make it.
It's meant to be diagonal, but we'll let you get away with it as long as you get the spelling right. I think we're fine.
I am doing the best I can do. That's my artistic
with what
version.
You got.
Rejection Rehab. It looks like
wonderful.
It looks like my 5-year-old daughter wrote it, but hey, you know what? It's going to work. It's plugging it, and this might be your new. We might have to replicate
my new design.
This tea mug to start selling.
I'm not sure. I'm glad you're a professional athlete rather than a professional artist. Put it that way.
But Jim, been called a mathematician. I've never been called an artist. But you know what? I can put some watts out on the bike, and I can shoot it in the upper dog on the net on the ice hockey. So
you certainly can. Well, listen. Let's dive right into it. So you've been a professional athlete in two separate sports, and that's not a mean feat. That is a very difficult thing to do. You got Michael Jordan who managed to do that. You got Jim Lubinski. I'm wondering, you also ran a 4:59 mile when you were 12 years old. I mean, that's a pretty confident kid. And you have to be confident to be a professional athlete. Have you always been confident? I mean, I see you, we speak most weeks, and, I see you on your podcast, and I've seen you host these Tower 26 Zoom meetings. You're an incredibly confident guy, and that's one of the reasons I have you on the show. Have you always been confident, or did you build it over the years?
Well, as you said, thanks for that introduction. That was amazing. But yeah, as you said, I ran pretty fast as a young buck. I started my athletic career when I was probably about 5 or 6 years old playing ice hockey. I don't know why. My parents never played ice hockey. They never strapped on skates in their life, but some reason they took me to the rink, and I found, that was my passion right away. I was like, oh man, I love to do this. I was scoring goals. I was the star of the team. And I never thought of it as confidence. I just thought of it, I was loving what I was doing, right? Even when we fast forward to 7th, 8th grade, I started running track. They started to have a track team in junior high. And I never was walking around like, oh, I'm king shit. I got, with my chest out. I was just lost in the process of really just loving what I did, right? And I think maybe because of that, a confidence comes out or a joy comes out in what I'm doing. And that's allowed me to advance in whether it's ice hockey, whether it's triathlon, podcasting, coaching, all the things that I have really excelled at in life have allowed me to, I guess, portray a confidence, but I look at it more like I just really love what I'm doing and I'm really into it. Before, when I was between an ice hockey career and I was going into the triathlon, I just found triathlon. I need something to do with my time. I had retired from ice hockey, so I went from a goal of working out for a reason to going to the gym and working out for no reason, because I moved out to LA I was working at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And yeah, I did well at it, but it wasn't my passion. And I didn't have that type of confidence. If you would have seen me, I was just going through my daily routine, day to day, not really enjoying what I was doing. So then when I came back to triathlon and I found coaching and I started the podcast, then I started showing that passion again. And I think that's what you're thinking is, or what you're calling is that confidence. And I'm engaged in the process. And I just love what I'm doing.
That's wonderful. Just hearing you. So I think the main message there was find your passion, and in finding your passion, you can find your confidence. Because if you're doing something that you're not super passionate about, it's unlikely you're going to like put a lot of effort into it, and likely you're going to build confidence from it. So I really love that. But one thing I wanted to ask you specifically about is, as a professional athlete and as any human being, we go through our setbacks, we go through our rejection. I want you to talk about rejection. Life is one long list of rejections. We talk about successes. You've been a professional athlete, you're an incredible triathlete. I look at your times and, now you've got this great community, in Tower 26. We see all this success, but can you talk about the rejection you faced in your life and how you've managed to overcome that?
That's a really great point, because you see all the successes and you see, you share, especially nowadays, you share on social media, oh, this is what I won this race. This is me taking the tape at this race. And very rarely you see the rejection or the failure of these professional athletes, of these people having such success in life. And one thing actually you noted last year, I had a really bad experience at Ironman Texas. I limped through the finish line. I had crazy heat issues. I was nauseous, throwing up. I had no energy. I made it to the finish line, and I was actually real on social media saying, okay, I had a hiccup today. This was not my best day. And I laid out what had happened, maybe what I had done wrong. And it was tough. It was tough to come back from that, but I laid it out there and said, you know what, even the top athletes who are winning by wide margins, they have their tough days, but you just don't see it as much, right? Or you don't hear about it as much. Throughout my entire life, my career has been full of rejection, right? But I've always been able to reframe, and maybe it's my mindset, maybe it's just blind stupidity, I don't know what it is, but I've always been able to reframe that rejection as motivation to keep moving forward towards my goal. So when I was playing ice hockey, like we stated earlier, I was pretty good from the start, but as you move up the ranks, the talent starts to even out, right? Some of the lesser talented athletes, the kids who are less cut out to play ice hockey, fall by the wayside, and it funnels down to the stronger and stronger athletes. So that by the time you hit high school, everyone's kind of on the same page, right? Everybody's kind of moving in the same direction with the same skill set. So once you graduate high school, then you go, and most ice hockey players play 2 years in between high school and college, and it's called junior ice hockey. You don't get paid anything. It's kind of like semi-pro, but it gives you these development years. So then the colleges or the professional teams come and say, okay, instead of having a 17, 18-year-old freshman, I have a 20, 21-year-old freshman that's going to start playing for me. So you go to this in-between area. And my goal was to play junior ice hockey. All through high school, I said, I'm going to go play junior ice hockey, then I'm going to get a Division I scholarship. And then from there, I'm going to see if I can go play professional if all falls in order. So I graduated high school and didn't apply to any colleges, and I said, I'm just going to go play junior ice hockey. So I had a list of teams I was going to go try out for. There was nothing set in stone. One team after another, I got cut. I went to Iowa, I went to Minnesota, I went to Michigan, I went out east, I went out west, I went to Colorado, I went to Texas, and I got cut from probably 5, 6, 7 teams. Early on in this series of events, I got a letter from this new team that was starting in Bismarck, North Dakota, Coach John Buchanan. And I said, this is a new expansion team. I'm too good for that. I'm not going to go play for these guys, right? So I kept the letter, but I threw it in the bottom of a drawer. So I was getting cut, one team after another. I was home in between training camps one weekend, and I got a letter from University of Illinois, and it said, you've been accepted. And I was living in Chicago with my parents, and I said, I never applied to University of Illinois. I never showed any interest in going to University of Illinois. And what one of my parents had done, my mom or my dad, had actually applied for me. They sent in an application and said, you know what, he needs to have a fallback plan in case this doesn't work out. I never wanted a fallback plan. I said, this is going to work out. This is going to be my future. But every tryout I came out from and got cut, I let it fall by the wayside. I forgot about it. I didn't let it bruise my ego. I just said, okay, what's next? But I also was learning from those as well. I wasn't just saying, okay, I'm just going to go spin my wheels and do the same thing. Because as we know, what's the definition of insanity, Tom?
It's doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Exactly, right? You came up with that, didn't you? You told me that you came up with that saying.
I think that was, it was either me or Einstein. I can't remember. Yeah, one of the two. Super smart guys.
But I was learning from these tryout camps from, what the best players did on the ice, but also how the best players held themselves outside of the training camp. They weren't out all night partying. They weren't doing stupid things in the dorm rooms these teams put us up at. So I was learning camp to camp to camp, and I was progressing. So I was getting closer to the season start, and I said, I have nothing to do. I explore all the options. So I remembered I had that letter from John Buchanan, and I said, I'm going to grab that letter. I'm going to call Coach Buchanan and see if there's space for me in his tryout camp, which was one of the last ones. So I grabbed the letter, I called him. He said, Jimmy, it would be great to have you here. Very welcoming voice from the start. And he said, get up here by August 21st. We'll get you in for a week. We'll see how things go, right? There's no guarantees. So I went up there, but I remembered, I said, you know what? One of the things that really struck me at one of the camps back in Minnesota was actually for a team in Iowa. It was a team in Des Moines called the Des Moines Buccaneers, but the camp was in Minnesota. So you remember all this detail. I remember my roommate at the time showed up to camp in a suit and tie, right? And I was like, this is a weirdo. What do you wear to an athletic event? You wear a sweatsuit and maybe a t-shirt, a raggedy t-shirt and a pair of flip-flops, right? But this guy showed up in a suit and tie, nice shoes, his hair was done. And I remember asking him, what are you doing, buddy? He's like, you know what, man, image is everything. The smallest thing can separate you from everybody else. And I show up in this and I show that this is my profession and I want to look professional showing up to this camp. So I remembered that. So I got on the Northwest Airlines flight and I wore a suit and tie to fly to Bismarck, North Dakota, right? And actually it was a good omen because I got on that flight and they're like, you know what, Mr. Lubinski, you're 18 years old. We're going to upgrade you to first class because you have that suit on. You look so nice. So the only first time I've ever ridden first class was going Northwest Airlines to Bismarck, North Dakota from Chicago. So I showed up. The assistant coach picks me up at the airport. He walked right by me. He didn't realize, he said, I thought you were some business kid out for an interview. I didn't realize you were coming to play for me. So picks me up, takes me to the rink. The first session, right, there's so many kids there. There's so many guys there. The first session, there's 2 teams on the ice. I played in the first practice. And as we're getting off the ice, the coach says, hey, if anybody wants to stay for the second practice, you guys can stay for the second practice, right? I was the only guy who's turned around, stayed on the ice for the second practice. So instead of practicing an hour, I stayed on for 2 hours, buried myself. But that's the way the rest of the camp went, right? I was always going the extra mile, hoping to separate myself from everybody else on the team. So that's another thing I learned. I realized that the best athletes who were performing the best in these camps, making the teams, were the ones who always went the extra mile. They were never trying to take the shortcut. So I took that learning as well. Fast forward a week, we have the sit down. Coach says, Jim, you made the team, right? You made the team. And what really convinced me was that first day when you showed up in the suit and you stayed on the ice. You were the only player to stay on the ice for that second practice, right? So I know your question was about rejection, but I used all those rejections to motivate me and springboard to what landed me the job, landed me the gig on this team. And honestly, Tom, if I had been on any of those other teams, I probably would have just been in the shadows. I ended up being a fan favorite, top goal scorer, top penalty minute. I was an all-star. We made the playoffs every year. I was on radio. The reason I know how to speak into a microphone is because of the commercials I did in Bismarck back then. So I just had this amazing experience, and then it came out of it. I had a 4-year scholarship to go play Division I ice hockey at Fairfield University, and then from there I went out and played professional for a year in the minor leagues. But I attribute all that success I had in the sport to not just belaboring the point that I didn't make this team or make that team. I attribute the success to all those failures and learning from those failures.
I love that. I didn't realize you were a celebrity in Bismarck, North Dakota. And random little fact here, you're actually the second celebrity we've had on from Bismarck, North Dakota. The first celebrity we had was my first guest ever, Anne Malum. She's the founder of Solid Core that she sold for $300 million. She's actually she's from Bismarck, North Dakota.
Anne would definitely know a Bismarck Bobcat. And she probably has so I dyed my hair.
She probably knows who you are. She probably watched you playing when she was growing up.
I'm sure. I had blonde hair. One weekend I dyed my hair blonde, and I was always in the starting lineup. So all the lights would go off, the spotlight would come on. Sirius by the Alan Parsons Project. You remember that song? It introduced the Chicago Bulls. I know you're probably a soccer fan or football, as you say, but
more of a rugby guy. But carry on.
So that song would come on, the spotlight would come on, and I would always be the last player introduced, right? There are 5 guys introduced. I was the last one. People would go nuts. So one weekend I dyed my hair blonde. The next weekend, all the little kids at an autograph signing had their hairs dyed blonde. And the moms came up to me and they say, "You jerk. Because you did that, my kid came home from school and all their friends' hair was dyed blonde." But
what a trendsetter.
It was great. I mean, that's the kind of experience that, I wouldn't have had if I would have just said, you know what, I got in University of Illinois, and there's nothing wrong with that, and my life would have taken a different path, but I definitely wouldn't be where I am right now if I had accepted all of that rejection I had in that summer of 1997.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And I also think it's really important when you're going through rejection in that moment, even if you don't understand why it's happening right then, to know that in the future, you'll find out why. You were rejected by, this girl, so you end up marrying this girl. You didn't get this job, so you end up getting that job. You didn't get into this team, so you ended up getting into that team. And your life would probably be better as a result. So even in the moment, if it hurts, that rejection, in the future, you will work out why. And in the interim, you kind of have to be philosophical about it, I think.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. Is with the relationships, with the job, with the sport, a lot of times you don't want to deal with the fact that, hey, it's my shortcoming. It's something that I did. It's something that it's always their fault. I could have looked at the coaches and been like, they don't know what the hell they're talking about, right? They don't know that I'm the best player out there, that I could be a fan favorite, that I could bring in, fill all these asses in seats. They want to make the money. They should be hiring me, right? It's their fault. Instead, I looked at myself and I said, how can I improve into the next camp? How can I improve into the next camp? And you said in relationships as well, like the first thing you want to do is say, oh, it's her fault. She's an idiot. Like, she's stupid. Like, you don't want to deal with it. You don't want to look at yourself and say, it's my fault too. It's a 50-50. And I was a big part of that equation. What did you learn? What's the path that you went down that caused that division? Same thing with a job, right? I've had a lot of jobs in the past. I've worked, you name it. I cut down trees. I've been lifeguards. I've been a waiter. I've done every job while I was trying to fund my ice hockey career in the summers. And, you get fired from jobs. And the first thing you say is, oh, that boss is a loser, right? It's their fault. But, there's people that are succeeding in the job. You got to look at what wasn't I doing that other person is doing? And you have to learn from it.
I love that. It's like, so you're taking it and then you're looking inwards and you're basically seeing it as an opportunity to improve on yourself and say, okay, where are my shortcomings? Where can I improve? I'd like to push back a little bit on that though, and say that there are some things, I talked about this with Anne Malum in the first podcast. Let's say I ask a girl out, right? And let's say, she says no. I know, probably unlikely she'll say no, but let's say she says no.
To you, buddy? That's why we're doing this with our shirts off. If you're listening to audio version, guys, you don't realize.
Get on the YouTube.
That's why we do it with our shirts off. I mean, your volleyball pictures, buddy. I live vicariously through your volleyball career.
Oh, mate, Speedo Sundays. That's a classic. You got to come down to Miami for that. So yeah, I think that there are certain things that you can improve on if you get rejected. Let's say you get rejected by a girl you're asking out, right? But there's certain things, like I mentioned, like I'm 5'9". I'm not going to be able to change that. There's certain things about that I like about myself that I'm not going to change for someone else. There's certain things that I know that I'm already good at that I'm not going to change for someone else. So I think it's working out. Okay, if someone rejected you, or a boss, a guy, girl, whoever rejected you, you do kind of have to work out. Okay, what are the things that I can work on and I need to work on, and then what are the things that like I can't change about either I can't change about myself, like my height and so on, or things that I already like about myself and I don't need to change about myself, and it's actually them who doesn't like those things, but I like them, so I'm not going to change for you.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because you have to be true to who you are.
Yeah.
And I live in LA, buddy. You lived out here for a while, and there's a lot of people who are not true to who they are, and they're trying to be who they're not. And I think one of the reasons I've also been pretty successful in my career is I've been real, right? I haven't changed those core principles that I have to be somebody else. Now I'm talking a growth mindset from how can I be a better athlete? How can I learn nutrition-wise in triathlon? There's ways that I can grow in my education, whether it's sport, relationships, work, life, but you still stay true to who you are. And, like you said, there's physical attributes you can't change. My schnoz is 7 feet long. I had to find a woman that liked the big schnoz,
I need everyone to watch this because his schnoz is not 7 feet long, and he's a very good-looking man, but he's very self-deprecating.
But that's the thing. Like, you can't change physical attributes, but as long as you...
Well, as a good surgeon, you probably could, but...
Well, yeah, especially LA or Miami where you're at. But yeah, no, you're 100% right. Like, there's things you can't just bend to be somebody that you're not, and that shows through, right? You got to be true to who you are. Yeah. But there's also, I'm reading this book by Carol Dweck called Growth Mindset. Are you aware? You know this book? Yeah. And we read these books, and some stuff you read, and you're like, wow, like, of course I know. Why is this book even written? Like, stuff is obvious, but guys, some people. I at least take this for granted that it's called the growth mindset, right? You're always looking at areas of opportunity where you can improve on some of your shortcomings, right? But that doesn't mean you're trying to improve things that are you.
Yes,
right? So
that are like true to you and like make you who you are. I like to look at myself as a good person, right? And maybe being the head coach and overseeing a bunch of other coaches means I have to be a little more hard, right? And say, okay, you should be doing this, or you're not going to be with us anymore. You should be doing that, but that's not me, right? I'm going to find other ways to bend my approach to dealing with situations, so I don't change who I am. I'm always going to be myself, and not all of a sudden turn into a hard ass because that's what the books say I should do with my subordinates, right? Yeah. Great points. And I want to kind of turn the conversation now just specifically to sport. I found in my life, certainly, there's been certain things that have given me confidence, whether it's, going to med school and finishing med school, finishing my undergraduate. My parents have given me a lot of confidence over the years. But one thing that's been unwavering alongside my parents and a few other things has been sport in my life and physical activity. I've loved it. When I growing up, I played tennis. I've played rugby. I've played cricket. I've played all the sports. And now, you're my triathlon coach. I do a lot of triathlon. I also play beach volleyball. I still play tennis. And it's given me a huge amount of confidence over the years, not just in the sport themselves, but me as a person and in other aspects of my life, whether it's work, whether it's in relationships. And I wanted to speak to you specifically, being a pro athlete in 2 different sports and being a coach. What do you think it is about sport and physical exercise that can really enrich your life and give you confidence and help you with the fear of rejection?
Well, first off, let's look at it from the mental standpoint first. When you're training, or when I see athletes in the toughest situations, right? Whether it's a loss of a loved one, we've just had the LA fires here, Palisades. We lost 50 houses of athletes that we've coached, right? 50 athletes lost their houses in the Palisades, and then a couple people that we coach in Altadena lost their houses. I mean, we were surrounded by loss back in January. And one thing that I preach to these athletes is you got to keep moving. You got to get out for a run. We got to get you on the bikes. One of the first things that we did, the priorities that we had with these athletes, is to get them gear, get them training gear, get them shoes, get them a bike, get them a stationary trainer, get them swim equipment, and then get them moving. Because when you're, like you're saying, when you're moving, when you have that mind space just to get away from all the crap, get away from all the stresses of that everyday life, and you could just have that time to yourself, 20 minutes, go out for a 20-minute run, you go out for a 15-minute strength session, you get in the pool and you swim for 30 minutes, that's time to you. You don't have to worry about the stresses while you're in there. You get into the frontal lobe and you get into this type of meditation that takes you out of the stress. I always say that the sport is an exit from reality, right? It gets us away from the stresses of everyday life. If that sport becomes an additional stress, we got to rethink what we're doing for that sport and get to something that de-stresses us. Because we're not professional athletes. 99.9999% of us are not professional athletes. We're doing it for joy. We're doing it as an outlet from everything else that happens throughout the day. So it gets you this release. And if you feel like a boiling pot and you just have this constant simmer and boil of these emotions and these stressors, and you never have that type of release, that's where that frustration comes. That's where that anger comes, and it shows in your personality, right? So it gives you that type of release. And even if it's 20 minutes a day, it's like you're turning down that simmer, turning it off for 20 minutes, and then it might restart as you get out, but at least you have that reset.
Yeah, I think I definitely use it as sort of my version of meditation, and it definitely helps me with, the stresses in my life. But one thing you just mentioned there is, you can kind of get away from your problems for a little bit, because that time is, it's your time. But one thing I did want to touch on there is that sometimes, do you think that people use exercise and training as a way to actually run away from their problems rather than face them straight on? And the reason why I ask this is that there have been studies done on this. There was a study out of Harvard that showed that people, ultra endurance athletes had a higher incidence of mental health disorders. And they even saw a correlation between the number of hours people trained a week and the likelihood that they had a mental health disorder. So I'm wondering, do you think some people are actually using sport in some ways and sometimes to run away from their problems rather than actually dealing with the problems themselves?
Yeah, I mean, for that very reason that I said earlier, that's another issue, is that it gets you away from everything, so you don't have to deal with it. It's like someone who's an alcoholic, right? When they sleep, they're not drinking, right? So they try and sleep a ton to get away from those demons that keeps that bottle in their hand. It's the same thing with sport. If you're just constantly putting off the issue because I gotta go ride for 4 hours, I don't have to deal with that issue. I gotta go run for 2 hours, I don't have to deal with that issue. You still have to deal with the issues, right? You still have to deal with them head on and figure out how to maneuver the situation. You can't just keep running away from it. So you're totally right. I think another thing, getting back to that alcoholism analogy, is you find a lot of athletes come into our sport, especially who were former addicts, and they just take that addiction and they move it into sport, and they treat that sport as a cover for that addiction, right? So they just put all that energy. So you look at it like, oh, it's healthy, but if you start treating it like another addiction and it starts taking away from your family, your job, anything else you'd be doing in your life, it's just as much as an addiction as anything else, because too much of anything is what is that? What's that saying you made up? Too much of something is never a good thing? Something like that? I don't know. It says something like that.
I love the way you attribute all sayings to me. Thank you.
But that's what I always take credit for, all the sayings.
Everything in moderation, including moderation.
Everything in moderation. There you go. But I mean, you're totally right that, you could use it to run away from your problems as well. What I find is when I'm having an issue, whether it be at work, relationship, friends, whatever it may be, I go and train, and that's where I do my best thinking, right? Because you get into this deep, like I said, the frontal lobe, and you start to really break down the situation, and ideas come to me when I'm out there and I have that blood moving, that maybe if I was just sitting, watching Savannah and Hoda on the Today Show, I wouldn't be able to. That's the Today Show in the morning. Have you ever seen that over here? I'm just watching TV. I'm not going to get those type of thoughts. So it helps me deal with situations. So when I finish that run or I finish that swim, I can come out of it, and then I say, okay, I'm going to reply to this email with this thought that I had while I was completing my exercise. I
feel the same way, and I feel as though that, obviously the physical side helps, the mind and the body are one and the same. We're all connected via, our brain to the nerves that go all the way to the end of our hands and feet. Like it's one and the same to me. And I feel like I'm sharper when I exercise. But I think, big message is that you can't substitute exercise for example, getting therapy. Like if you've got an issue that you need to deal with, yeah, for sure, exercise, and that can help you, and that can be meditative, and that can be really helpful in many ways. But if there are issues that you're using exercise as a crutch for, you need to actually talk about your issues and do exercise as well. Do both. But just doing the exercise is not going to resolve, I think, whatever issues you may be having. And I'm speaking from experience because, I was, bullied very badly when I was at boarding school, and I never spoke about it for years. And it took me into my late 20s, early 30s to actually open up and speak about it. And I finally got therapy, and I finally spoke to a psychiatrist, and it was this amazing transformative experience. But if I just kept on running away from my issues and not talking about them, not facing them head on, I don't think that I would be able to function the way that I function now. And I feel like I function quite highly in terms of both, my brain and, my physical activities like triathlon and so on. And so the point I want to get across is it's both exercising and getting therapy or speaking about things that are causing you those issues?
Yeah, and that's I say it all the time. I'm a triathlon coach, right? I can tell you how to get fit. I can tell you get ready for a triathlon. I can tell you how to go win a triathlon. You got to do a lot of work, but I'm not a therapist, right? If you have issues that you're dealing with mentally, sure, I can help guide you that, but I want to send you to the professional that has the education, that has the experience to deal with that accordingly, right? I'm not saying people come to me with that kind of stuff, but I have my profession. You need to really assess where you're at mentally and seek out professionals for that specific issue. I mean, it's diet as well. If you have a problem dialing in your diet, you're going to see a nutritionist, right? You're not going to just say, I'll just figure it out myself. See the person who has experience and can really help you deal with the issue that you're facing. Absolutely.
And one question I wanted to ask you specifically about triathlon, but I think it really applies to almost every facet of life, is triathlon's a very individual sport. And it's very, very easy in triathlon to compare yourself to other people. I mean, you've got a time for the swim, you've got a time for the bike, you've got a time for the run, you've got a time for the whole race, you've even got a time for the transitions in between the swim and the bike and the run. Everything's timed, you're up against other people, just like in a job. You can compare yourself to other people, you can see how much you're getting paid, how much other people are getting paid, what titles people have, promotions. Same deal with, where you live, how big your house is, all these things. You can compare yourself. In triathlon, it's literally comparing yourself to other people against the clock. First of all, do you tell your athletes not to compare themselves to other people? That's my first question. And secondly, if you say don't, how do you teach them not to?
It's very hard. It's extremely hard, especially in this sport. It attracts a lot of type A personalities. So the first thing athletes do is they come in and say, Joe Schmo swam 25 minutes, they rode 2 hours, and they ran 1:13, right? But this athlete I'm talking to is a 40-minute swimmer, a 2.5-hour biker, and a 150 runner, right? So, hey, we're not there yet. You can look at what that North Star is, but I have to constantly reiterate with our athletes is, I know that you're you, and you're going to go out there and you're going to perform the best within your ability level on that given day. And that's all we can ask for. And then, as I was saying earlier, we learn from it. We adapt the training based on what we learned from it, and we keep moving forward. So then maybe in 6 months, a year and a half, 2 years, we can get to the times of Joe Schmo. But right now, what you're focused on is present, focusing on that process and letting all that noise, whatever everyone else is saying, everyone's trying to distract you with what this person's doing is what that person's doing. Let that all go by the wayside. Focus on yourself, right? Focus on what you can currently do at this present point in the situation. We can have end goals. I think it's great to have end goals. Where do you want to go with your swim? Where do you want to go with your bike? Where do you want to go with your run? That's great for motivation. But if you're constantly comparing yourself, what this guy's doing, what that guy's doing, you're just chasing your tail. Right? In this sport especially, you have to be extremely dialed into the process and focus on what you're specifically doing day in and day out. And you're making little gains every single day. You add up little gain after little gain after little gain after little gain. After a month, that's a lot of gains, right? After 2 months, that's a big gain. But if you're just saying, I want to go from a 40-minute swimmer to a 30-minute swimmer, or I want to go a 3-hour bike ride to a 2-hour bike ride, that's going to look like a massive chasm. Right, that's a huge delta. But if we're just adding these little gains through that focused work day in and day out, eventually you'll be there. You won't even realize it. Right?
So almost competing against yourself rather than competing against others.
Exactly. This whole sport is just it's a time trial against yourself. And we'll bring it back to the mental side of it. It's that mental strength, right? I heard a quote by a Navy SEAL chief a couple months ago, and he said, to become a successful Navy SEAL, it's 100% mental, 100% physical, right? You can't have the physical side without the mental side. You can't have the mental side without the physical side. So you need to be totally mentally dialed in. Sure, there's going to be ups and downs, but if you don't have that mental strength to equal that physical strength, then it's going to be really easy to get deterred, and then you're going to go do Hydrox or something, right?
High rocks.
No, Hydrox, some water therapy where you. So,
sorry, I didn't know that.
But you can't let the mind get away from you. No, I just made that up, but that's that's one of my Jimisms. You can't let the mind get away from you. You can't think. I always say when you toe the start line of an Ironman, it's a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike ride, and a 26.2 mile run, all in the same day, right? Top professionals do it in 7 hours and 45 minutes. but they give you a 17-hour range to do it. So there's athletes going to be out there for 17 hours. If you toe that start line and you say, I got 17 hours of work. How the hell am I going to do this? It's daunting. It's overwhelming, right? It's just like that guy looking at, I want to be a 2-hour bike rider. I'm a 3-hour bike rider. How the hell am I going to do this, right? You take it 1 mile at a time. You take it one pedal stroke at a time. You take it one swim stroke at a time. You don't look long term. You look, boom, present, focus on the process. Before you know it, you're through the swim. You're onto the bike. You're riding one pedal stroke at a time, 1 mile at a time. Before you know it, you're through 112 miles, through the second transition area, and you're onto the run. You're running 1 mile at a time, 1 mile at a time. You've been there, Tom. You take it out of transition, and you got to run 26.2 miles. It's daunting, right?
Yeah.
But if you look at it short, if you aim small, miss small, right? One mile at a time, boom, on to the next mile, on to the next mile. Before you know it, you're in the last 10K. You can see the finish line, and you're on the glory, right? But it's hard to do. You got to keep refocusing, staying present, focus on the process. Sure, you have the end goal, but you're never looking too far down the road.
That's what I want to just, my last question before I get into your favorite books and favorite movie and best piece of advice you've ever been given and given out. I just want to focus a little bit on your mental fortitude and strength. And a little anecdote. I have a friend right now. She's training for her first half marathon. And she's never run before, and she's been training. She got all the way up to 10 miles in her training. And I asked her the other day, are you ready for your race? I think it's like in a week's time, actually, over in LA. And she said, I don't think I'm going to do it. And I was like, what? Yeah, I just, I have managed to run 10 miles in my training, but I just felt like I was dying during the training. And I was like, you've got 3 more miles to go. You've already trained and run 10 miles. You're almost there. And I convinced her that night, there and then, to book her flights for the race and to do it. And the race hasn't happened yet, but I'm pretty confident the race will happen. She'll do it. She'll do her first half marathon. But in the same way that she kind of had this real lack of confidence in herself, even though she's already done almost 90% of a half marathon. She just has 3 more miles to go and she's done a half marathon. And then on race day, you get all the people cheering you. Lots of things can help you on race day. She was really underconfident and almost didn't go through with doing it. And you, on the other hand, you're one of the most mentally strong people I've met. I've raced even against you. I remember when we did this race that you organized, actually Tower 26 organized, we did it. We ran in Santa Monica so that we swam in the pool. We did a virtual bike, and then I think this was during the pandemic, and then we ran right on the front in Santa Monica. And I remember, we were running, and I think two guys dropped out who were definitely faster than me, but they dropped out. So I was second to you. You were the only one who was ahead of me. And I remember, because we crossed each other several times, and just the look of your face, locked in, even for a race that was just against 10 people, you were so hyper-focused. And I just want to know, and I'm sure other people out there want to know, how do you really get that mental fortitude and strength to give you that confidence and to reduce fear of rejection?
Well, it's funny you bring that up, because that leads, you said something about my favorite book, because it leads into the state of flow, right? I can find the state of flow, like you said, whether it's the tiniest little race, whether I'm sitting doing Training Peaks comments, whether I'm writing on a blog or I'm writing an article about something. I get into this state of focus where every external factor, all the noise on the side is totally quiet, and I'm just focused on that present moment, right? And you saw it on my face, right? It's the Lubinski glaze, right? Because no one can bother me. Nobody can penetrate that concentration I have, because I know if I want to reach to the depths of what's possible, I have to have ultimate concentration. I was racing Ironman Wisconsin a few years ago, and I was in the hunt, right? I was in the hunt for podium. I was top 5, and I had it's a 112-mile bike. Like I said, the first 56 miles, I felt horrible. I felt pathetic. I felt I'm embarrassing myself out here. I'm garbage. So it was a 2-loop course, and I crossed into the second loop, the second 56 miles. And I said, stop feeling sorry for yourself. Find that concentration and do what you can do. All you're capable of doing is what you're given on this day. Find that and do it. So I started to focus, right? And it wasn't instant, but I got into that feeling of flow eventually. I got off the bike, I got on the run, and I had the ultimate focus. I felt unstoppable, right? So I have this total focus. I end up having a great run. I ran into 5th place or something like that. I had a really good result. And about a week later, I had one of my former coaches call me, and he said, I've been really hesitant to call you because I don't know what this conversation is going to lead to. And I was like, why? I haven't talked to you in a couple months. What's the problem? And he said, well, at Wisconsin, I was right out in the middle of the road yelling for you, and my wife was yelling for you, and you just totally ignored me. You just ran right by me, and I'm like, and I was like, I didn't want to call and figure out what I had done wrong, but I'm calling, so can you tell me like what's the problem between us? And I said, dude, there's no problem. I didn't even see you, right? I was so focused. He was standing right in front of me in the middle of the road in Madison, Wisconsin, but that's, once you find that, it's like a drug, right? You want to keep coming back to that every single race, whether it's a virtual race down on the Santa Monica Beach Path or it's the World Championships in Kona, Hawaii. You want to get to that spot of, this is the ultimate focus. Nothing can penetrate that focus. And that's how you truly find that true potential.
Yeah, I love that. And I think I hope you'd be proud of me that the exact same thing happened to me when I was doing a race this year in Puerto Rico, my first race of the season. And one of my good friends, she was watching me on the course and she was screaming her head off and cheering for me. And at the end of the race, like I had no idea. At the end of the race, she was like, why did you ignore me on the course? And I was like, I didn't hear a word. And she literally showed me the video. She videoed it and she's screaming her head off. Several times I run past, laser focus. I mean, so, if I can do it and I'm not even a professional triathlete, then I think anyone can learn to have that kind of laser focus to eventually bring them like a huge amount of confidence like you have, Jim.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's hard. You want to give everybody a high five and a handshake, and everyone has different goals, right? Some people want to just go out there and enjoy the experience, and that's fine too. But if you really want to realize that true potential, whether you're a writer, whether you're whatever it may be, you got to find that flow state where you're just totally ingrained in that process, and you have this concentration that just cannot be penetrated.
Yeah. All right, Jim. I know you're a busy man. We don't have that much time left, so I have a few.
Stay here all day, buddy. You want to stay another hour? We got hours. We haven't talked about jobs.
You've got a job and kids and
come on.
Oh, we'll have to have you on again. We'll have Jim Lubinski family life next time because that's a whole nother side. Like you managed to do all this stuff and you've got 2 kids, and I just don't know how you managed to get it all done. You're a really impressive character, but this podcast must come to an end in the not too distant future. So I just want to ask a few closing questions that I ask to all of my guests. First of all, favorite book and favorite movie.
Well, can I say 2 books? Because
yes.
2 books that I've read multiple times, and they're due to be read again. So the first book, and I tell all my athletes to read this book too. It's called The Rise of Superman by Stephen Kotler, and it's nothing to do with Superman, but it talks about that flow state and all the athletes, and mainly action sport athletes, who have tapped into that flow state to achieve feats that previously have been thought of as unachievable, right? So it's called The Rise of Superman. And then the second book that I might have right here, it's called Elite Minds. Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah.
By Beecham. Elite Minds is just, and that's one I read, and I just say, every single sentence in this book is beneficial to not only an athlete, but to, if you're looking to get the most out of your career, out of your relationship. It's just, it takes the elite mindset and puts it in words that anyone can understand and apply to their life.
Love it. Movie? Did you hear my voice crack there? We're going to have to edit that bit out.
Yeah, no, don't edit out. Nothing on the cutting room floor, buddy. We just keep it all in. So what did you just ask that again?
Favorite movie.
This is what we do. If you want to edit it out, now we slow it down so the editor can take it, cut that out, and so break 5 seconds, 3, 2.
We're not going to edit. We're going to go all the way through.
See, I'm going to show you. Okay, what are you asking now?
Favorite movie.
Okay, so I love the movie, and this is another one I've watched multiple times, Zero Dark 30. And I love the story of it, right? I like how they went and they got Bin Laden, but the woman with the CIA, and her name's escaping me right now, but her perseverance at this goal or the task of catching Osama bin Laden, I mean, she was unrelenting, right? When so many people told her, she almost got fired, go do something else, she said, no, this is what we're doing. This is my North Star. And she took all these steps necessary to find the hardest guy to find in the entire world. And I don't know, I just think it's a great story behind it, and it's action, and it's, yeah.
Superb. Okay, last question. Best piece of advice you've ever received and best piece of advice you've given. It can be the same thing if you want.
Yeah, that's a funny question. I mean, I've received so much advice from so many different coaches and mentors over the years, but I'll say a most recent piece of advice that I got. And one of the athletes I coach is Conan O'Brien. Right, so he's the former late night star podcaster.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that. I didn't know that.
I take credit for his podcast because I told him I had my podcast going. I said, Conan, you have a great personality. Do a podcast. But he told me, and this was just recently, and we were talking about something, and I said, what if everything falls apart in my life, and the job goes by the wayside? And he said, Jim, I have no doubt that you would ever have a problem succeeding in life because you just put your head down and you get the work done, right? And not saying that's advice, but it's a comment of something he sees in my personality that reminded me that, hey, you know what? It just takes focus on what you're doing at this current moment. It's not easy all the time, but you keep working, you keep moving forward, you don't belabor the past, and good things keep happening, right? You look at his career, he had some tough times in the early 2000s when he got the late night show, and then he got fired from the late night show. He had nothing really going on. He was in a really rough spot mentally, but he reinvented himself, right? He started being a stand-up comedian. Then he moved into travel shows. Now he's onto his podcast. It's the number 1 podcast, number 2 podcast in the world now.
After this one.
But he reinvented. He kept moving himself forward. So I thought that was a really good compliment to me, but also a great observation of what he sees in my personality. So
I think I couldn't agree more. And just to kind of piggyback on that, I think that one doesn't have to be the smartest person in the world. One doesn't have to be the funniest person in the world. One doesn't have to be the best looking person in the world. But if you put in effort, you can make up for so many things that you might not be the best at, and you can be more successful than the person who is naturally smarter than you, funnier than you, and so on. If you put that effort in, like you do, I mean, you put so much effort into your training, into your job, and I just love all the success and confidence that you've built, over it. And you seem like a fortress. Like I feel like no one could, your rejection, insults, no one can kind of like get you at this point. And I think we've all got a huge amount to learn from you and everyone who comes on this podcast.
Well, another piece of advice that I got is in the rejection categories. Every year when I was playing ice hockey, and I know we want to end this, but I was always, every year, and me and my friends would always laugh about this, whether I was in Pee-wees, and this is the different levels, right? You go Pee-wees, bantam, midget, high school, junior ice hockey, professional. Every year I was called the worst player in the league, Tom. Every single year. And then the next year I'd move up to the next level. So I knew I'd really made it when I was getting paid to play ice hockey and some guy called me the worst player in the league. I just dropped my gloves, dropped my stick, and I just waved to the fans. And I said, it's been done, right? I was the worst professional ice hockey player per this other guy. But I kept moving forward. Right. And, we still laugh about that to this day. My friends still call me the worst professional ice hockey player in the league, right? Because every year I was called the worst player in the league, but I focused on the process. I stayed present. I kept persevering, and I just shut out all the noise, and I stayed true to myself. And I think that's a big takeaway from what you're trying to convey here is don't try and be somebody else. Be yourself, and with hard work, with a positive attitude, with that confidence that all of that cultivates, you'll do some good things.
I agree, and in a similar way, there's that joke. What do they call the guy who graduates or girl who graduates from the worst medical school in the country and who gets the lowest exam score but passes in the whole country? What do they call that person?
Dr. Tom.
Probably right. They call that person doctor, right? So yeah, it's all relative. And listen, Jim, it's been such a pleasure having you, on the show. And I encourage people to check out, Jim's podcast, Be Race Ready. Check out Tau 26. He's an amazing coach if you're looking for a triathlon coach. And honestly, I will send you this mug. That I owe you at least. Every guest who comes on, I don't pay anyone. They get this mug, but that is worth more than any money you can imagine. imagine. This mug, it really is. Trust me, you'll see it when you get it, Jim.
With all the podcasts I do, if I drink that on every podcast, buddy, you are going to be rising those charts in no time.
Mate, I can't wait. And you've got to put in a good word with Conan O'Brien for me. And we both have Irish last names, so I feel like it's going to be on pretty soon.
It's meant to be. Next time I go run, you'll be with me, and I'll bring him to Miami, and we'll run on the boardwalk.
I love it. We'll do Speedo Sunday in Miami at the beach volleyball courts.
You know what? The way I have him fit, we say body by gym is what we say, and you're a Coach Jim athlete when you wear that Speedo down there on the boardwalk. We have Speedo Sundays. So.
I love it. All right, Jim. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Lubinski.
Tom, it's a pleasure, man. Thank you.